Good morning and welcome to First Unitarian Society of Madison. My name is Lorna Aronson and I'm a member of our Board of Trustees. I'm delighted this morning to be joined by our ministers, Reverend Kelly C. and Reverend Kelly A.J., the worship team of Drew Collins, Linda Warren, Daniel Carnes, and Stephen Gregorius, along with the Ryan Joy family who will be leading us in our chalice lighting. The vision of First Unitarian Society of Madison is growing souls, connecting with one another, and embodying our UU values in our lives, our community, and our world. We are so glad you're here with us virtually this morning. We hope that you'll be able to join us for our virtual coffee hour immediately following today's service. The information for joining can be found on the homepage of our website, fusmadison.org. I invite you now to join in a moment of silence to center yourselves and bring yourselves fully into this time as we join together once again in community.
We come together this morning to remind one another to rest for a moment on the forming edge of our lives, to resist the headlong tumble into the next moment.
Here we have come into this sacred space, quieter now, with our readiness.
We claim for ourselves awareness and gratitude, taking the time to look into one another's faces and seeing their communion, the reflection of our own eyes.
Hushed voices, hoping, trusting for so many things, for connection and communion, for inspiration and information, for healing and wholeness, for words and music, for celebration and consolation.
This community of laughter and silence, memory and hope is hallowed by our presence together.
Here we have come into this space bringing all of who we are. Let us be willing, however we are changed.
And we invite you now to light a candle or a chalice at your home as the Ryan Joy family leads us in our words of affirmation.
We join our voices in a holy communion of mind and heart, dedicated to the promises that bind us in compassion, one with another. In this hour, we light the flame that signals our intention to find the sacred in every living thing.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Would you please rise in body and or spirit to sing with me hymn number 1000, Morning Has Come. is given. Wonder fills this moment shared together. The light of peace here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home. Open our eyes to see that life abounds. Open hearts to welcome it among us. The light of love here shines upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Our story today comes to us from Frog and Toad, two very dear friends who have many adventures. And on this day, Frog and Toad were reading a book of fairy tales.
The people in this book are brave, said Toad.
They fight dragons and giants, and they are never afraid. I wonder if we are brave, said Frog.
Frog and Toad looked into a mirror.
We look brave, said Frog.
Yes, but are we? Asked Toad. Frog and Toad went outside.
We can try to climb this mountain, said Frog. That should tell us if we are brave. Frog went leaping over rocks, and Toad came puffing up behind him.
They came to a dark cave. A big snake came out of the cave. Hello, lunch, said the snake when he saw Frog and Toad. He opened his wide mouth. Frog and Toad jumped away. Toad was shaking. I am not afraid, he cried.
They climbed higher, and they heard a loud noise. Many large stones were rolling down the mountain.
It's an avalanche, cried Toad. Frog and Toad jumped away. Frog was trembling.
I am not afraid, he shouted. They came to the top of the mountain. The shadow of a hawk fell over them. Frog and Toad jumped under a rock. The hawk flew away.
We are not afraid, screamed Frog and Toad. Then they ran down the mountain very fast. They ran past the place where they saw the avalanche. They ran past the place where they saw the snake. They ran all the way to Toad's house. Frog, I am glad to have a brave friend like you, said Toad. He jumped into the bed and pulled the covers over his head.
And I am happy to know a brave person like you, Toad, said Frog. He jumped into the closet and shut the door. Toad stayed in the bed, and Frog stayed in the closet.
And there they stayed for a long time, just feeling very brave together. I invite you now into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which sustains and strengthens First Unitarian Society and our work in the world. You will see on your screen that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You will also see our text to give information there as well. We thank you for your generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
These are the words of the poet Joy Harjo. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies, and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. The kitchen table, as the poem suggests, becomes the place where we learn of living. Yes, we come to the table because we must eat to sustain our bodies, yet so much more happens in that space. At that table, we learn the culture and manners of our family and our people. It is the place where we learn, we gossip, we dream, and we listen. I cannot hear the words of the poem without thinking of my grandmother's table, the one passed on to her from her parents, where she prepared meal after meal, where I learned the art of making pasta and how to turn it into capelletti and ravioli and gnocchi, where I did my homework after school, where I watched her mend and sew as she taught me to wind bobbins, where she taught me the few Italian phrases she remembered, where she taught me what it means to love. It was at that table that I learned what it means to belong, to be a part of something larger than myself, where I learned how to celebrate joy and where I learned how to hold deep and gutting sorrow. I think the table is where we learn how to welcome people into our lives as we listen to them share the stories of their days, where we learn how to be patient, how to pay attention, how to open our hearts and reach out our hands. We learn what it means, as the poet says, to be human. We learn our history. We hear the struggles and the successes of the past. Listening at the table, we learn the world. This image of the table, where we are nourished and sustained, reminds me, of course, of our congregation. We join together here, each bringing our histories, our stories, our struggles, and our joys, and we meet others who are also looking for sustenance, looking to be fed. Here, where we bless those newly born and we grieve the ones we have lost. Laughing and crying, it is here that we are figuring out what it means to be human together. In thinking about my grandmother's table and in reflecting upon our congregation, I realized that both are places of relational transformation, places of intimacy and ultimacy, where through the sharing of stories and listening to the stories of others, we experience deep communion, the kind of communion that happens in the building of community.
It might seem almost counterintuitive to find Unitarian Universalists reflecting on the intimate communion of religious community, given the image that the wider world often has of us. Ours is a tradition that celebrates every person in their pursuit of meaning and an ethical life. Loosed of the bonds of dogma and ecclesiastical authority, freed to answer the calling of new and higher monitions of conscience, as William Ellery Channing put it. And so, both inside and too often within, we have this reputation as a cult of individualism. Among the very most famous emblems of this incomplete version of our faith is our Unitarian ancestor Henry David Thoreau and his overassigned and underread book, Walden. This slim volume catalogs and condenses 2 years he spent living in a small cabin in the woods around Walden Pond, not far from Boston. In oft-quoted words, he said, "I went to the woods because I wished to live deliberately, to front only the essential facts of life, and see if I could not learn what it had to teach, and not, when I came to die, discover that I had not lived." So revered is his adventure in the woods and the book that followed, that today there is a replica of his cabin at Walden and a statue of him, too. Thoreau's Walden is held up as one man's communion with nature, the story of a great poetic soul, a perfect crank and hermit saint who retreated to the solitude of a sylvan monastery in order to truly find himself alone. And this is no less wrong of an idea about Walden as it is about Unitarian Universalism. Because Thoreau never lived those years alone in the woods, and he did not pretend to. He went into town often to visit family and friends. He welcomed guests into his little one-room home. He even threw parties there, including each year when his annual watermelon crop came in. Again and again, he would sit down at the table of one of his friends or have them sit down at his to share food, thoughts, experiences, company, the communion of sharing in each other's lives. Many of the names around those tables belonged to famous men: Ralph Waldo Emerson, Nathaniel Hawthorne, Bronson Alcott. But there were women there too, and most of the time they were the ones who'd done all the cooking and cleaning that made all those nice meals possible. Sophia Thoreau, Lydian Emerson, Elizabeth Peabody, and May Alcott not only literally set those tables, but also held their own in the conversations had around them. Thoreau and his famous book were the products of a community, as all art is. His ideas and his words were formed and shaped by the other people he was in deep relationship with. So that even this great symbol of autonomy and go-it-aloneness is actually a story of how all our lives depend upon communion with others. We can only fully become ourselves through human relationship, not by exiling ourselves to the woods and hiding away from the world. In the same way, we can only practice our faith by sharing our insights and experiences, challenging and applying the wisdom we have received, hashing out our spiritual and practical differences over the table, forming and reforming ourselves and each other. We revere the worth and wonder of the individual, and that reverence makes us deeply aware of how much we individuals need to be in community with each other in order to express that worth and fulfill that wonder.
The world begins at a kitchen table. The image of Thoreau at Walden, not alone in a cabin pondering his thoughts by a fire, but at a table with others, one part of a larger community, reminds me of another piece of our history. This time, a group of women who built community and congregations against great odds, the Iowa Sisterhood. Between 1880 and 1930, 21 women changed the course of Unitarianism. Most of them we have never heard of their stories, their voices lost to us through forgetfulness and time. In their day, they were considered an embarrassment to the Unitarian movement because these early women were not part of the educated elite, as most of the universities and seminaries were not open to women. These women clergy who are responsible for starting 18 congregations and rescuing many others across the Great Plains were called to only the small or shakier congregations that the men would not take, with denominational leadership believing it best if they were kept on the sidelines and hoping that they would remain a largely unnoticed presence. Yet despite the contempt from Boston leadership, these women helped spread our faith throughout the Midwest, the Plains, and into the frontier. Two of these caught the eye of Jenkin Lloyd-Jones, who was at the time head of the denomination's Western expansion. He was struggling to find male clergy who were willing to leave the comforts of the eastern shores to head out to the small rural wilderness of the Midwest. He saw the work of Mary Safford and Eleanor Gordon as they worked to start a new congregation in Western Illinois. Within that first year, Mary's preaching had attracted 150 to 200 people on a Sunday, and in addition, after finishing services at one church, Mary and Eleanor would travel 8 miles to another, where they would lead services to a full and overflowing crowd. Why the image of the table brought these women to mind is that one of the reasons for the success of the Iowa Sisterhood was the pastoral approach they brought to the building of these congregations. Most of these women had grown up in these rural towns, and they knew and understood the day-to-day hardships of the people in their pews. They provided activities that offered people who were isolated and spread out on farms opportunities to gather not just on Sunday morning, but throughout the week. And the churches became essential community and social centers. They sought to make their churches extensions of the domestic hearth, calling our congregations another home, and making comparisons between the kitchens and the sanctuaries, knowing that these are the spaces where life happens, where meaning is found time and time again. Mary Safford once said that the world of the divine is not to be found in theology, but rather through daily life in our homes and in the lives we create together. For the Iowa Sisterhood, religion was a way of being and doing that was discovered, formed, and made new among the people, all the people, around the table with laughter and tears as we put ourselves back together once again.
When I think of the table I grew up at, my mother's table, I think about good food, raspberry lemonade pie, and white corn tortillas pressed by hand. I also think about a place to do homework and play bananagrams, and somewhere that my father might share a comic strip from the newspaper he found particularly clever. At that table, you weren't excused just because you were the first to finish eating. You could always stay and make pleasant conversation per the family rule. So talk we did about church and school and politics, the way things are and the way things ought to be. There I learned hospitality and generosity alongside the art of pleasant conversation. Really, that family rule was another way of saying the work of being together is not done until everyone is nourished and fed. As a child, I did not always want to come to the table, did not always want to stay. But the table is a place you go to because you need to, and because others need you there. Our spiritual foremothers of the Iowa Sisterhood were right about this as about so many things. The congregation is like a home for a family of families, one chosen by those who need it, and just as much a place for the earthy work of living as is any home and hearth. The home's heart, the kitchen, is a place of toil and sweat, a place where there is always work to be done, apples to peel, dishes to wash, and hard truths to speak and to hear. But from that work comes the promise of sweetness to savor, and the highest form of human sacrament, to offer to another the very stuff of life. If the popular memory of Thoreau has washed away his community, and particularly the women who did all that labor to sustain him, our contemporary echo of it ought to be a community in which we all take turns setting the table and scrubbing the pots, both metaphorically and literally, so that each of us can also have our turns for contemplation and the sharing of wit and wisdom. In the pew, through the screen, and at the table, wheresoever people come into deep relationship with each other, here is where we form and reform, repair, renew, and remember ourselves and each other. Once again, the words of the poet Joy Harjo. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. At this table we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor, falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
week we gather with hearts heavy with sorrow and hearts filled with joy. We share these here in community, knowing we are held in love. This week, Eleni Musared Varga shares with us that 13 months after a tumultuous entrance into this world, Emerson, is finally crawling and even pulling himself to stand. We are grateful for the amazing physical therapists at UW, and we cannot wait for our FUS family to meet him. Sarah Best asks us to light a candle in celebration that Sarah, Daniel, Andy, and Jake are celebrating the 100th birthday of their granny, Mary Evelyn Newton Best. And Dorrit Bergen asks us to light a candle in memory of Jim Grimm, who died last month. Jim was a devoted son, husband, father, and friend, and a member of a family that has been very special to Dorrit for the last 50 years. And we light one last candle for all the joys and all those sorrows that live within the sanctuaries of our hearts. May they each be held gently in gratitude, in love, and in hope. Blessed be, and amen.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding all. We rest in this love. Would you please rise in body and or spirit to sing with me hymn number 1051, We Are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We are sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We are seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our ancestors. We are the Spirit of God. We are mothers of courage and fathers of time. We are daughters of dust and the sons of great visions. We are sisters of mercy and brothers of love. We are lovers of life and the builders of nations. We are seekers of truth and keepers of faith. We are makers of peace and the wisdom of ages. We are our grandmother's prayers, and we are our grandfather's dreamings. We are the breath of our the Spirit of God. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe who we are.
These words of benediction come from Robin F. Gray. Ours is a communion born of words and welcome. Our communion finds expression in caring and commitment to our highest ideals. Our communion lives on in our hearts, though this sacred hour is ended.